I've got a bagel with butter, honey and cinnamon and cream cheese and jam. And my bagel was too big to fit in the toaster, so it's all got a bit messed up, but I'm all about big chunky bagels, like none of this bagels thins nonsense. Okay, so this podcast, I actually wrote down the name of it. So it's from a podcast called ED Matters, which I've just started listening to, and it's brilliant. I feel like I'm learning so much from it. And the one I listened to in the car just then was number 73, Dr. Nicholas Farrell on exposure-based therapy. And then there was another good one along the same lines, which is number 37, Norman King, Eating Disorders as Anxiety Disorders. And I'll link them both below. It resonated so much with me because most eating disorder treatment kind of is exposure-based therapy. Like, you have a fear of eating food or resting or gaining weight or something, and through treatment you're like forced to face those fears. So I don't know that I've like actively thought about going through exposure-based therapy, but yeah, I kind of feel like that's what recovery is. So with my eating disorder, my fear is like food and weight gain basically, and so I avoid them. And that's what you do if you're scared of something. Like, you avoid it and you develop behaviours to like make you feel safe. So like compensatory behaviours like avoiding social situations, choosing the lowest calorie options, not gaining weight. And some of my behaviours were kind of unrelated in a way, like eating off a certain plate. That's not really going to influence my weight, but it's still something that like artificially makes me feel safe. And the problem is with this like avoidance and these behaviours is you then never expose yourself to this whatever that you're scared of, to realise that the thing you're scared of isn't really real. And then the more you're avoiding it, it's like building up that belief of like, yes, I do need to avoid it, like this is a scary stimulus. And then if you do come into contact with it, you have this like big panic response. Like if you gain some weight, you panic, and then that enforces your fear as well, because then it's like, see, look how terrible I feel, like this is something to be scared of. And then over time, the fear just like grows and grows and grows. And like certainly for me, I find I have to do like more and more and more to avoid it or to feel safe, like introducing more and more behaviours. And so like the avoidance and the behaviours are kind of like a short-term fix and a quick escape. But in the long term, they're then actually like increasing your fear of food or weight or whatever. And so then exposure therapy is like facing all these things that you're scared of, which is pretty much recovery by nature, like eating more than just the minimal amount, gaining weight, not exercising, resting, or maybe like some rules that you hold. Like one of mine was always, I can't eat right before I go to bed because I'd imagine I'd just balloon up overnight and all this food would stick to me straight away. And literally how my psychologist gets me to challenge these things is through exposure. Like, so firstly, expose yourself to it. I'd go and eat straight before I went to bed. Secondly, don't compensate for it. So don't miss calories out of your dinner to make up for it. Don't stay up later. Don't go and exercise. Don't do something that's gonna like artificially bring that fear down, but through a compensatory like eating disorder type behavior. Basically, what she gets me to do is just feel anxious, like do the thing I'm really, really scared of, feel this anxiety, and then realize nothing bad happens. So like she's always saying to me, anxiety never killed anyone. Like, you can feel anxious and it will peak, and you can tolerate that and just sit with it and then just wait for it to tailor off on its own, which is horrible. Like, none of this is a nice experience, but she tries to get me to make it better by like distracting myself when I'm feeling anxious, or like doing something nice for myself, take a bath, read a book, paint my nails, just something to like help the anxiety to pass. But like the really important thing is that it does just pass. I don't interfere and make it pass by like skipping calories or exercising or whatever. But yeah, I just feel it, tolerate it, and just wait for it to pass on its own. And then she gets me to repeat it, like repeat, which makes sense because these fears are like so ingrained and so well practiced. And like the amount of times I've avoided eating before going to bed, if I think about relearning that, like how many times do I then need to do the opposite and expose myself? So eat right before I go to bed and do it again and again and again until I start to realise, I guess, that like this thing that I was scared of doesn't happen. Like I do actually wake up the same size. I don't balloon overnight, like. And exposing myself to like food rules or things that I'm scared of definitely has worked for me, and it's gotten easier over time. And as I practice it more and more, like I do relearn my fears, and then I come to eat something. Actually, I used to be scared of bagels, to be honest, and now I'm just like, oh, what was the fuss about? But there's one thing that's always really confused me with this like exposure thing, and that's weight gain. Like part of my fear about these foods is that if I eat them, I'm gonna gain weight. And then well, if you've come from a point of being underweight, like that is the aim, that you should be gaining weight. So then, I don't know, it's confusing for your anorexia brain, because then it's like, well, see, these foods do cause weight gain. This is why you should be scared of them. So kind of through the exposure, you're then like enforcing the fear that you had. And someone actually messaged me on YouTube with the exact same thing. Like, well, I challenge all these foods and that's great, but then I put on weight, so... But this is why I loved this guy's podcast, number 73, because he says the aim of exposure therapy is to either expose yourself to your fear and realise this terrible, awful thing you thought was going to happen didn't happen, or that it does happen, but that you can tolerate it and that you can like learn to cope with it or what have you. I feel like this has been like my missing link in challenging myself and like exposing myself to things, because so like one of my fears, if I eat everything that I want to eat, I will gain weight. And in all reality, that probably would happen because I'm still below like my body's natural set point. Like I'm in a healthy BMI range, but it's probably not where my body would want to be. And if I want to maintain this weight, I basically need to restrict my food to be able to do that, because I'm like suppressing my body's natural weight. And I still think about food a lot. So in all reality, like, yes, I probably would gain some weight. So like, this is the bit that blew my mind. If I face this fear, like, yes, the thing that I'm really scared of would happen. But then his second part is like, but I can tolerate that. And it kind of made me think as well, like, you almost need to go beyond that fear of weight gain. Like, what does that fear of weight gain mean for you? Is it like, you're scared people won't like you anymore, or you won't like yourself, or you'll lose control? I don't know, you'll lose the thing that you're really, really good at, you'll lose your identity. It's almost like the fear of weight gain itself isn't just the fear, it's like, what does that mean? Like, I'm scared of gaining weight because blah, 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 blah. And, I don't know. This made so much sense in the car, now I'm not explaining it very well. Maybe listen to the podcast. Maybe these guys will do a better job of explaining it than I did. And the other thing this podcast really made me think of is like that experience of yo-yoing in recovery, where like you gain a little bit of weight and then you freak yourself out and then you run back because you gain, and it kind of like you have a panic and it enforces your fear. So you think like, see, I do need to be scared of this, freak out and run back. And so you just end up in that yo-yo back and forth cycle. And I guess with this like exposure therapy thing, you need to like expose yourself to the weight gain, be scared, and then just sit with it, like tolerate the anxiety. Don't go and compensate or do something to like quick fix it and artificially break your anxiety, because that will just enforce your fear and like keep you in that loop of like, see, I do need to be scared of weight gain. I do need to do these compensatory behaviors. I do need to avoid my fear. But like, I guess you need to like break that cycle, gain the weight, sit with the anxiety, tolerate it, don't compensate. And then the really hard part, like wait for that anxiety to pass naturally. So you don't step in with anorexia to fix your panic response. You like trust your team, trust treatment, trust recovery, and sit with the anxiety, like keep going, wait for it to pass, and then like repeat. And I've spoke about it before in videos, but it is like breaking that cycle and not ending up in that yo-yo back and forth. But yeah, I guess it's continued exposure, like keep going and don't have your panic response and fear response, which you will, like we are scared of these things. You have a genuine phobia of gaining weight. So when you do, you're gonna have a fear response. But if you act on that, that's what is anorexia. Like, that's what's keeping you in your eating disorder cycle, because you get scared, run back, blah. Yeah, it kind of makes sense to me that like our fear response is so much more practiced and so much more ingrained than our exposure response. Or like, yeah, we just don't know how to cope when we're exposed to it, but we know how to run away from it. So no wonder that's our automatic response every time. But yeah, I guess recovery is exposure, isn't it? It is like exposing yourself to these things, like eating and gaining weight and not exercising, resting, and practicing a different response. And yeah, sitting with the anxiety, letting it pass on its own with time. Like, my psychologist always says there's like a graph of anxiety. So basically, like, your anxiety shoots up when you're exposed to the thing you're scared of, but it doesn't just go up and up and up forever, and it doesn't stay up forever. So like, yes, it goes up, and that's when we then interfere, because we're like, I can't handle this weight gain or food or whatever, and then we do our compensatory behaviours. But like, if you don't and you let it peak, then it will like have a shelf life. Basically, it will peak and plateau, and then gradually over time it will just come down. I do kind of know this is true, and even in the podcast the guy says like over time you build up confidence, because you start seeing like the more you're exposing yourself and challenging these things, it's getting easier, and that gives you like momentum, which is definitely true. But yeah, it's definitely not easy, but I guess, yeah, it is recovery. Anyway, these guys probably do a much better job of describing it than I have done, so I'll link both these podcasts below. And all of the ED Matters podcasts have actually been amazing for me to listen to. They're like, I think they're meant for clinicians, so they're really like educational. I've really learned loads from them. Okay, I'm back. I've got another random little thing to show. So as I become iller and more engrossed in anorexia and I lose weight, I become more and more like obsessed around how my food looks and everything being neat and tidy and perfect. And I think they're like strategies and compensatory behaviours for me to like make me feel safe around food, like little rules that I have to do this, this and this, and then it's okay to eat. And so part of recovery for me is like challenging these things and stopping myself doing them. And anyway, Brendan, my fiance, is the total opposite of this. He has no such rules whatsoever. These are a packet of cereal bars that we've just thrown out, and look how he opens the box. Which doesn't really fit in with my like need for everything to be nice and tidy and neat and clean and whatever. But like, I'm trying to move away from that. I don't want to be that sort of person. I want to be more like relaxed and food to just be food, and not for me to need it all to be in its certain place in the kitchen and look in a certain way and blah blah blah. So I guess in terms of this like exposure therapy idea thing, like this for me is kind of exposure therapy, because like that does make me a bit anxious seeing a torn up box, but I guess I need to like tolerate that and like feel anxious about it and wait for that anxiety to pass without me correcting it or avoiding it by like buying my own box of cereal bars that I keep nice and tidy, or without compensating in some way or whatever, without basically using anorexia to artificially make me feel better about the situation. Like, let the situation just be, feel anxious, and then wait for that anxiety to pass, and then repeat it as well. Like, let Brendan go and do it again and tear into cereal bars again, and then that, like, let that one pass and blah 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 blah, and then over time, like, hopefully that just won't have an effect on me. I think it is getting better, like partly just with time and like with gaining weight as well. I relax a bit around food and I do just naturally seem to lose some of my rigidity, but also it definitely is through exposure that, I don't know, I'm kind of like, I'm learning to see that it's okay. In fact, more than okay, like it's the person I want to be. I don't want to be difficult to live with. I don't want to be controlled by having food all perfect. Like, I want to focus on other more important things in life than what does my cereal box look like in the kitchen. Ugh. So it's kind of a weird thing to film again, but hopefully it's like relatable for some people. Anyway, lots of love, and I'll post again next weekend.